Welcome to another episode of Women in Research. My name is Nakasa Esther, and with me we have a very good prof who will introduce herself. Welcome, Prof, to Women in Research. Please introduce yourself for the sake of our audience.
Thank you very much, Nekesa. My name is Cecilia Onyango. I am an horticulturalist. So I'm an associate professor in horticulture from the College of Agriculture. And I have done my work in vegetables.
All right.
And to make it more specific, I work with indigenous vegetables.
Indigenous vegetables.
Yes.
Just hold on there, Prof. You will take us through slowly by slowly. But first, so let's start. How did you end up as a horticulturalist? Is that what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah, Nekesa, to tell you frankly, my passion for agriculture started in high school.
Oh, nice.
With my agriculture teacher. The teacher came in when we were in Form 2 and organized us into groups and said in agriculture we must produce. And he started a zero grazing unit.
Wow.
So for me, I picked cabbages. They did so well that I was like, oh my God, I want to be like Mr. Matoke. He was Mr. Matoke.
Yes.
And my school is Nyabururu Girls High School in Kisii. And so when we were picking degree programs to come to the university, it was BSc Agriculture, Agriculture Economics, Agriculture Education, you know, everything was agriculture.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
that's
so
how
you
I...
actually ended up doing an undergraduate
in
agriculture?
Yes, I did a BSc in agriculture in this university. That's University of Nairobi. And then after that, you see, when you do a BSc in agriculture, you are exposed to vegetables, to fruits, to flowers, to animals. Then again, my chair of department, the late Professor Chweya, may his soul rest in peace, was taking us through horticulture. And I loved it.
Okay.
So when we finished our undergraduate, I applied for a master's in horticulture.
Wow.
Yes.
So when you were doing all these things, you knew at the end of the day you were going to be a farmer, you're just going to be, you know.
Actually, I remember...
What was going through in your head, in your mind?
You know, as I was doing this, I met one of my high school teachers. Then I said, I want to be an Africa rep as a woman in agriculture.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
You know, I was seeing myself out there being this lady who is pushing for agricultural production.
Okay.
And so I felt like this is the space I wanted to be. Not to dig. I didn't like to dig. And you know, most people, when I got this admission to the University of Nairobi to take BSc Agriculture, you know, one of my aunties asked my mother, you want your daughter to go to university to come back here and dig just like us?
Be a farmer.
But for me, I was like, this is a bigger thing. I can be somebody. I don't know why I thought I was going to be an Africa rep in agriculture. Yeah, but this is what I saw myself to be somewhere. And so I did my master's in horticulture. And luckily, I got recruited as a tutorial fellow in the Department of Plant Science and Crop Protection. I remember as we were studying, the late Professor Chweya was in this big program with the International Plant Genetic Resources, then called EPIGRI, now it's called Biodiversity. So they were doing collections of traditional or indigenous crops. At this time, I think from the 95 coming to the 2000s, there was a big push to start utilizing our traditional foods. And so he was in the collection and conservation of the vegetables that time, the indigenous vegetables. I think I felt like I needed to be in that team, you know? And there were non-government organizations pushing for people to go back to the traditional or indigenous crops because they said they were nutritious, they were adaptable, you know, like they were found throughout this country. So I felt like I need to work on those. So for my master's project, I worked on pigeon pea, but the vegetable. You see, I was doing horticulture. So it's what we call green pigeon pea, which is used as a vegetable. And
in Kiswahili? Do you know know the name in Kiswahili?
Pigeon pea. Do I know pigeon pea?
Do we eat it?
Yes, we do. Pigeon pea is actually nzo in Kikamba.
Yeah, I wanted to ask whether it's related to kunde.
Not kunde.
But
pigeon pea. What do we call pigeon pea?
nzo in Kikamba.
Nzo in Kikamba is not a cow pea. It's
but I know it's like a version of ndengu. I see
yeah,
them
but
when
it's
they're being sold.
yeah, but it's different types. We have the ones that take long, like they can be like a perennial crop. You can have several seasons, you know. Yeah. But what I worked on was vegetable. You harvest the pods when they're green. Yeah, this one new variety is developed by ICRISAT. Yeah. So I worked on those, and you know, that time I just looked at how does the production environment affect the yields, but also the quality, because these were new genotypes coming into the market. People were going to utilize them, but I needed to know, are they any different from the old types that we have in terms of nutrition? So that's how I entered into the space of the role of production in influencing not only the yield, but also the quality. Yes. Wow. Yeah, so that's how I started my journey in research, in a very small way, but I started.
So how do you enjoy the research?
So now let me tell you my story.
The research journey, yes.
Yeah, because now from the masters is like you're just introduced into research. You're not a researcher really. Yes. You're just picking the tools. And then I started looking for a position, for a PhD position. You know, they already took me in, the University of Nairobi took me in as a tutorial fellow. And so I needed to have a PhD. I started looking for scholarships. Oh my goodness, it was not easy. It wasn't easy. And I can tell you, as a lady, you know, that's the time I was already in my productive life. Okay. I mean, I started having my babies, family, yes. And now you are being pushed to do a PhD. There's no funding for PhD. So it took me long. And unfortunately, you know, you don't always get support. I got very good support with the senior colleagues in my department, but some of them were not very kind, because I remember one chairman of department, by the way, who was supposed to be really my support, commenting like, looks like Cecilia is not interested in PhD. She's only interested in family. It hurt me.
It hurts?
It hurts, because I was writing a lot of applications for funding. You know, so it took a little long, because I finished my master's in 2000, but I didn't get a PhD scholarship until 2005.
So 5 years.
5 years.
And you started a family. So you have a young family. Of course. And this one looks like it's taking you, you know, more time.
Yeah. So my babies are young. I have to make a decision about PhD. I must grow professionally. It's not easy. But you know, my department had senior ladies and senior men who really helped me. And I can tell you, ladies or young men, you need somebody to hold your hand, you know, to show you some direction. So anyway, I was assisted by our senior lady, Professor Mwangombe, to get a scholarship with the Netherlands government. That's where I went for my PhD. Little did I know that now I was going to be exposed to an agricultural environment that's broader than the horticulture I was focusing on. Of course, today we talk about food systems. But that time, it was like, wow. So I went into horticulture, which is the Department of Plant Sciences in the Netherlands, Wageningen University. And then in a group, you know, there they don't have faculty and departments. It's department and groups. So I went to the horticulture supply chain group. I worked on amaranth, mchicha.
Yes, I know amaranth. I know.
You know, that time, you know, the whites are asking, is this a salad? Is the, you know, like, can we eat it raw? What is this? Because it wasn't known much. But why did I pick that? As I told you earlier, you know, there was this push, go indigenous. and indigenous vegetables. They are nutritious, they are good for health. But then again, you remember the supermarket called Uchumi?
Yes, I remember.
They had started selling them, these vegetables. But then people started saying that they're contaminated, they're being grown by sewage water, you know. So that's when I thought, wow, how does the production environment and the people working with those vegetables affect the quality, affect the yields? You know, that time we were not talking about food safety. It was just about yield, yield. And remember, these crops are coming from the wild, coming now to the table. But nobody has developed the production practices. So there's a lot of borrowing from the other crops like maize, like tea. So people are using those fertilizers to produce these traditional vegetables. So then when I went to Wageningen, it was quite multidisciplinary. So you look at your research, not just in your space, you know? So it's production. But then, where are you producing? On the soil. So you might at one point ask a question from a soil scientist. And then they're being transported. And now people are saying that production is using dirty water or contaminated water. So the practices, people's values, you know, you start thinking about social science, transportation, the logistics, then the markets. Then the consumer.
Wow.
You know? So it means you have to look at the whole chain. From what are the inputs used? How are they being used? How do they get to the market? And how does this reach the consumer? Remember, they're being promoted for nutrition and health. But people are saying that water is being used. Extremely high levels of fertilizers are being used because we are thinking income. So in my research work, I looked at how does fertilizer use in this production of amaranth influence the quality. That's the nutrients that we are promoting, the yields, but also in storage. Remember, if it doesn't store for long, then it's lost. It's lost. That's how I now opened up my mind to start thinking, okay, and if we are going to eat things that are contaminated, what does that mean in terms of health? Are we being fed on nutritious foods, or
are we eating poison?
Or are we eating poison?
And I remember that talk. You were saying most of the. I remember one, especially one, because I know that conversation we've had it, where you were saying, why are sweet potatoes nowadays available all year round? And when we were growing up, they used to have some sort of a season, and someone used to say they are grown around toilets, and that's why they are always available. Nowadays, what we eat, you know, and people are comparing the sweet potatoes of now and sweet potatoes, you know, back then. But that's just an example. So go ahead. So when you came back.
So I come back as a young PhD, feeling really proud of myself, but reality hits. Yes, you've come back with a PhD, but you need to publish, you need to supervise students, you need to grow. Although I'd written my proposal for a PhD, it wasn't that competitive, you know. And here again, I needed somebody to hold my hand. And I've been held. I came back. Professor Kimenju told me, you know what, you might not start big. Okay? Go for the Dean's Grant. And form a team. And I formed a team. And from the Dean's Grant, that was 500,000 shillings, I trained one master student. And we published one article on spider plant. Yes. But you know, as I now started writing and thinking about my research, I realized that it's important to open up that space, not just look at horticulture. And I can call myself a food systems expert.
Okay.
You know why? Because I work with all disciplines and I work along the chain. So as we moved from the 2000 something to 2010 to 2012, I finished my PhD in 2010. So in 2012 coming forward, now there was a lot of talk about food safety.
Yes.
And remember when I did analysis of my vegetables, I actually tried to link what does that mean in terms of human health?
Yeah.
For example, if somebody uses too much nitrogen, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I had to do some reading and some conversations with the medics, you know, the doctors. Then I realized that actually amaranth is called a luxurious consumer.
Okay.
If you give it nitrogen, it will not stop taking, you know, just consumes, and then packs that within the leaves.
Okay.
Okay? So that nitrogen is packed as nitrates. That's now science. Okay? But that's not the problem. I was told that when animals or human beings consume that, then it starts becoming a problem.
Oh.
Yes. It affects the hemoglobin that's supposed to transport oxygen. So then you start feeling dizzy after a meal of amaranth.
Oh.
And so again, I realized that it accumulates other anti-nutrients that were also not good for calcium because they bind calcium. So then the question is, are we really promoting these vegetables for nutrition and health, or there's something we have forgotten at the production environment?
Yeah.
Because once the production environment does not give you a quality and safe product, then you are done.
There's no food safety.
There's no safety. That time we're not calling it food safety.
No.
No. No. And there was not even talk of use of pesticides and how that affects the safety of the product. The use of the water. Now late again, I got some research funds. Then we looked at, okay, what are the contamination levels in the traditional vegetables being sold in our markets? Then we found, oh my God, so many pathogens. That's the microbes that cause disease.
Yeah.
Then very high levels of pesticides, some of which had been banned in the export market, but were still being used in our vegetables. So that pushed me to start thinking, okay, how do we bring this to the people? How can we have all this scientific knowledge, but is it in a language that the consumer, that my mother or my grandmother can understand? Is it in a language that our members of parliament can understand? Okay, that's the policy makers. Then I joined a team where we were trained on how to translate science to inform policy and practice. And now that's my passion. I say that yes, there's a lot of science that we have accumulated, a lot of good results, but are we talking to the right people?
A very good question.
Okay. Are we using the language that they understand? Then the answer is no. We publish, we get promoted, okay? But then have we brought any meaningful change to society? Okay. So we have to look at the food system as a whole, from the inputs to the production, to the transportation, to the market, to the processing, and finally consumption. Okay.
Wow, this is very interesting, Prof, because I know the conversation of toxins. I've had it a lot, but I've had it in maize, in maize. And
aflatoxin.
Yes, I've had a lot of that. And what else? As in, for what has come out in terms of this short time I've been in interactions with the researchers like you, that's the one I've had. I've not heard of the traditional, you know, our traditional vegetables having toxins. That one is completely new for me. And now the question is, so what is going on right now? What are the farmers aware? Did this research output get to them in any way at all, even if it's a small population?
Actually, what I can tell you is that, and this has been informed by our export market. You see, what we export has to be clean, no contamination. And you know, Kenya is the leading exporter of fruits, vegetables, flowers. Okay?
Yeah.
We have perfected that because we have cafes and the government is keen on that. But when we go to our local markets, it's not the same effort that has been put. So what I did in one of the translation courses, I actually translated a chapter of my PhD work to show how this contamination happens in vegetables. And I used amaranth. And I tried to show in a policy brief how, what the implication of that is. Like, what's the cost? Yes, you say you've produced a lot, you have sold a lot, there's a lot of income, but then you start getting sick because maybe you used the pesticides that are very toxic with no protective gear. You didn't wait until those pesticides break down, because we have what we call the pre-harvest index, the number of days you have to wait before you harvest. You know, we are seeing farmers spraying in the morning, harvesting in the afternoon, going to the market, and that ends up in our stomachs. We have seen some farmers who have one plot for the Nairobi market or for the market, and one plot for home consumption. You know? What they don't know is that there's cross-contamination. They're the ones applying the pesticides, if it's pesticides they are running away from. Their kids are in Nairobi. Their spouses are in Nairobi. If they eat the contaminated vegetables, for example, that they're selling to the market without caring, it still goes back to the family. Okay? We don't control so much where we eat, especially if we are working away from home. Okay? So I tried to put this up as a policy brief. We shared with the Ministry of Agriculture, and that time I joined the horticulture working group, and so in a small way we started working. And I think from that time the government picked up, and we have now the food safety like policy in draft or something. And people are getting more aware, but it's not, I don't find that enough.
Yes,
we have
I was
not
about
done
to
enough.
ask you, do you eat those traditional vegetables yourself?
I do.
Because that's what I,
you know, we eat
that's
them.
What we really eat, and
it's
according
not,
to us, that's
some people are doing it well, but there are those, a few of those who are not doing it right. Some people are getting the pesticides that are supposed to be used for other crops and using them on our fresh vegetables. You know, there's a huge implication in terms of the effects on health.
That's really interesting, because then I know there are programs and there this export, if a farmer is marked for export, or rather if you're connected to the systems, that ecosystem, there's a way you are given education about it.
Yes.
There is a way you're empowered, you're trained, you're enlightened, so that you use the right amount of everything, so that you get the right crop. And what about the others? Now the other farmers, the ones who produce for us?
Yeah, you know, and that's where I say that as researchers, we have a big role to play. But not only as researchers. And that again takes you to where my research is going. I'm moving quite a bit from not just focusing on my special line of horticulture and opening up the space to work with others. So we need the researchers to generate the evidence. And once this evidence has been generated, it needs to be translated into a language to inform those who are in charge of policies, but also those who are involved in the practice. And that practice can be in production, it can be in transportation, it can be in processing, you know, all the way. Okay? And once these three people work as a team, I think we will achieve that.
Okay.
Yes.
So my interest is so piqued, because I'm like, I eat these things every day and I feed, and maybe just a question. I don't know whether there's anything you've noticed in terms of health, because health is also a subject that's normally talked about. For instance, the high rates of cancer, high rates of HIV. Like, is there a high rate of something that could have been caused with this, by this ingesting a lot of the wrong, you know, like, if my health is affected because of eating too much traditional vegetables, what would happen to me? Like, how will that present itself in terms of...
you know, I don't want to explain too much on health because I'm not a health expert. And it's not only the traditional vegetables. Actually, it's about the vegetables, the fresh foods, you know, fresh foods. Vegetables and fruits. If we contaminate that, you remember, if it's the pathogens, some of those vegetables, we eat them fresh. Yeah. If the water we are using to wash our tomatoes is contaminated and we are making kachumbari or salad, we ingest that. And even if we are cooking them, it means, I mean, there are some pathogens that are not killed by the cooking temperatures. Okay? So what I can say in terms of health, we know, because it's documented, that some of these pesticides, if the levels, and you see for the export market, we have the maximum levels that you cannot exceed. And they're so tiny. You cannot exceed. And they are the pre-harvest intervals, the number of days you must wait after spraying before you harvest. That is strictly observed for the export market. But for the local market, we don't. And so, I think there is a contribution of what we are eating to the high rise of disease incidences that we are seeing, especially the ones for pathogens, the salmonella, the typhoid, you know, the choleras and all. You know, if it's possible that some of those pathogens are picked from our fresh produce, because who checks the quality of that or the safety? We don't have that checked. And now there's talk of One Health. You know, and I happen to be in one program that's funded by UKRI, the EU, and Horizon 2030. And Kenya is not part of the countries that are undertaking this research, but I'm in the research and innovation. I'm one of the research and innovation leads, where we are looking at Tanzania, we are looking at Malawi, we are looking at Zambia, and we are looking at South Africa. So, and I want to relate to how this contributes to disease or disease incidences, because in this, it's food systems transformation for One Health in Southern Africa. What are we looking at? The export market and how farmers in Tanzania are transforming from producing, for example, crops for local markets to the export. What's the implication of that in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, in terms of food security even? In Malawi, we have production under irrigation. How is that related, for example, to mosquitoes? You know? Is there a relationship? When we have all this water around and we are using for irrigation, is there a relationship? If these mosquitoes are transmitting other diseases other than malaria, are there some zoonotics being transmitted by that? In Zambia, we look at the diets, the change of diets. How does that influence what's produced and how it's produced and the safety of that? Even the export market, how does that influence what's produced, how it's produced, and our food security back at home? You know, it's always said, Nekesa, that, for example, in Kenya, we produce what we don't eat, and we eat what we don't produce. Have you heard that statement?
No. So interesting. I'm learning.
Do you eat broad beans?
Broad beans?
Or do you eat French beans?
I like French beans, but
how many households in Kenya eat French beans?
Very few. By the way, I was surprised. Let me tell you, this is a story I always laugh about. I'm like, I was this old when I realized about French beans, the existence and all that. Okay, once my mom made, and we were like, "What's this, mommy?" Kuleni, it's beans. What beans? What beans are these? As we know the other beans, and she said, "Just eat. What I've given, just eat." But I was, as an adult, when I'm eating, you know, French beans. And I've grown up here in Nairobi.
Do you know we export a lot of those?
Exactly. And we do it very well.
Yes.
And
they're the best quality. Okay.
Okay. So we export what we don't.
We produce what we don't eat, and we eat what we don't produce.
Like what we are known for is not what we consume ourselves. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, can you imagine what that means to households? Because remember again, even if we are producing the French beans and getting a lot of money, for example, just as an example,
yes.
Do you think that all that money gets to the households and people are so keen of, oh my goodness, let's eat healthy? It will say, okay, let's pay fees, let's build a nice house, let's have a car, and then get bread and soda or something.
Eat and tumbo imeja.
Bas.
Eat and inaitwa jakaimat KDF. You know the KDF man. Umakula KDF. You're full for the day. Go.
And did you know that most of that comes from our semi-arid regions where we do year-round production from irrigation? So what I'm trying to say is, and that's why in this program that we have for One Health, I can now see the interlinkages between different professions, the importance of having multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary people working as a team, trying to solve the problems that we face, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and Kenya in particular. And that way, when we look at all those angles, because again, by the way, with this export, the French beans you're talking about, when we talk about quality and safety, in the quality aspect, there are those we call extra fine, which are like the best grade.
Yeah.
Okay? Then there's the fine and the bobby, and then the rejects.
And there's
Okay?
for us.
You know, there's nothing wrong with those beans, especially when we are talking about the size, the shape and all. They can be eaten, so long as they are not contaminated with pesticides. But you know that is wasted, it's thrown. We've spent so much resources to produce.
Yeah.
We are not eating what's not going to the export market,
Yeah.
and we are throwing. So we start seeing food being wasted
Yeah.
and then causing other challenges. Then we start seeing heaps and heaps of landfills of food wasted.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So there's a lot of interrelationships.
Interconnectedness.
Yeah, we are really, and that's why I push for, why can't we work as teams? Let's move out of our spaces, you know, the small boxes.
Yes.
Open it up. Let's work as a team, because these challenges, if you start talking about a challenge, it's like everybody is...
It touches on everyone.
Everybody. It touches on your health, it touches on your food, it touches on your income, you know, in your relations even, you know. Yeah. So for me, I'm really out here now trying to see how can we change all this research that has been done by so many of the researchers to bring about meaningful change in our society. Yeah, so I call myself again the food systems expert.
The food systems expert.
But they must be sustainable food systems.
Wow. And Prof, so what's the, apart from, okay, I've had the interconnectedness and you're calling, you know, people to a team. So what can you say to someone who, maybe let's specifically pick a researcher who's interested either in your line, say agriculture, they're trying to find themselves, or just a young woman researcher upcoming. What would you tell them? What would you encourage them? I've had a lot of support. You've really talked about you need support, you need your hand to be held at various stages in your growth, research growth path. So what would you tell a young woman researcher?
A young woman researcher, first of all, it's not going to be easy, but you must take the initiative. You know, you must know what you want, and then look for assistance, talk to the relevant people. Don't give up.
Okay.
Giving up for a woman researcher is not an option. It's not an option.
Yeah.
And be focused and consistent. You know?
Yeah.
Keep your determination high, and people will be there to help you. Of course, you'll get many of those who will discourage you or will not even support you, but that should not be something to discourage you.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to know who is in this space that I want to get into. Be it a man, be it a lady who is in there. you'll get support. And if somebody, if one door closes, that's not the only door.
Yeah.
No, persist.
Yeah.
Persist.
Yeah.
And strangely, as a woman researcher, most of the times people will not always, like praise you, like you've done. People will use your success to pull you down. But you know what? So long as you know what you have done is right, you have to stand tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to stand tall and say, yes, I did it.
And
People
keep
can
moving.
be talking, but you've made it. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So how did you ever, let me just ask, because the issue of family came up,
Yeah.
and while you were trying to grow, family was here, and yeah, did you ever have those challenges as you were growing? The family is growing and you're growing here, you've done your PhD for 2 years.
For 4 years.
4 years.
Nekesa.
Wow, you were away for 4
No,
years.
I mean, I was away 6 months, come back, but
So coming back and trying to now say, yes, on your mark, set, go, you want to launch, and your family is still here. How did you navigate that space?
I think, especially going for my PhD and leaving my young kids back here was the toughest time of my life. But again, I say it made who I am today. Yes.
Okay.
Because, I left my baby when she was 9 months. And I had to be away for 6 months. Then you come back, this baby doesn't know you anymore.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But yeah, I learned how to just say, well, I have to do this. If I didn't do my PhD when I did, I don't think I'll ever done it. I'll ever done it. Yeah, because you come back, the challenges are, they never stop.
Yeah.
Even at my level still.
You still have the challenges.
Yeah, as a woman, you still have to keep on telling yourself that, yes, you need to move on. You need to move on. You need to soldier on.
All right.
Yeah, there are
Thank
those
you, Prof.
challenges.
I feel like I've learned so much from this short conversation. Do you have a parting shot? Or do you feel like we've forgotten something that you would have liked to highlight?
I don't think we have forgotten anything, but for the young people out there, what you need is determination, focus, and then consult.
Okay.
Because I've seen that, especially the youth, they're giving up too early, too fast. Yes, and if you're a lady, I think kind of you need a double effort, to get there. But I'm happy that there's now a lot of focus on the ladies. But let's not forget our young men.
Yes.
Yes. We also need them. We need these young men to be supported as much so that we have families. And strong families.
Thank you so much, Prof, for coming at the Women in Research.
Welcome.
You've heard it from Professor Cecilia Onyango, a sustainable food systems expert. I'm glad to have known you. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.
UNC TV, empowering you.